Hey, hey. I'm just messing with my microphone here. Like, what angle do I want today? I can't hear you now. I think I'm gonna go low on this thing. Oh, what did I just do? There we go.
Test, test, test. Can you hear me?
There we go.
All
Oh
right.
yeah, the blue is coming through.
Excellent.
How you doing?
I'm all right. I am all right. I have been
Awesome.
enjoying uh, a maskless life. It's been kind of glorious. And
What
so
you got
that's
to
been,
do with all that freedom?
yeah, gosh, I know, right? And it's going to be interesting to talk about. So that's good. And oh boy.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Awesome. When do you travel out today? Uh oh, lost you.
You
There
should.
we go. Yeah.
Yeah, almost right after our interview, I'm going to head over
Wow.
to the airport and
Are you flying out of George Bush?
yeah, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Straight
Yeah.
to
They're
Narland.
pretty efficient there. To Nolans.
Yeah.
Sweet. That's awesome.
Oh,
Nolans is a fun place.
I know. I was born there. I'm
Oh, really? Okay.
super excited to.
They're canceling all of Mardi Gras this year.
I know, right?
What a mistake.
It's going to be interesting though because that town was founded by pirates, and that spirit kind of lives on. You know what I mean?
Oh, for sure.
So from my inside line there, you know, people aren't taking kindly to, okay, this is what you're gonna do. Yeah,
Oh, it's crazy. It's crazy. And I mean, they have such a vibrant service industry there too. I mean, those people rely on Mardi Gras. You know, the restaurant owners, the people that pour beer and serve food. I mean, food's an amazing part of New Orleans culture. And so it's like, okay, well, let's just deprive the entire city.
I know it's going to be interesting. So we will see. I'm recording now.
Okay.
My setup, I just couldn't get it going live yet because I'm on my little computer. So I'm just going to record and then post.
Hey,
So
it's all good. It's all good.
yeah.
No, I'm stoked. It's I've basically I got I don't know if you were able to see the doc I shared with you. It's a Google Doc, and sometimes they're not very friendly unless you have a Google
Right.
account that you're accessing it with. But I put together just like random Texas facts to kind of start things off because I know a lot of people are not from Texas that would probably listen and get a basic download of kind of what your experience has been this week and
Yeah,
kind
and
of
this is interesting. So for those who do not know, it's like Michelle is doing a part of the country tour this week from Las Vegas to Houston to Narlands. So interesting. Las Vegas, man, you can't let your mask drop and they're on you. Uh, Here in Houston, you can tell that there's people who really feel comfortable in their masks and they maintain social distancing. But for the most part, people who don't want to wear masks aren't wearing masks. The people who want to wear masks are wearing masks.
Mhm.
If your masks work, then you would think that it wouldn't matter if I'm wearing one and I want that mask. Man, that mask is my security blanket, my binky, my nighttime, my midday nappy poo that just keeps me safe for the rest of my life. Groovy. That is awesome, Adam. But then there's Adam, freedom loving Adam there who
America.
walking around maskless in the world. If my mask works, then I shouldn't really care if you're wearing one. In theory,
Especially, I
prove
mean,
me
if
wrong,
well,
please.
those with the antibodies or those who have been vaccinated also, why are they being told to wear masks and to not live life normally? I mean, it's just there's so much like conflicting information out there about what to do and what not to do, and just I guess with all that being said, to be forced to really adhere to the decisions that maybe kind of follow a lack of logic. It's just like, man, maybe we could just make our own decisions about how we want to live our lives and the kind of risks that we want to expose ourselves to, just at a personal level and at a business level. And like here in North Texas, right? You see a lot of business owners and businesses continuing to go forward with their own personal decision to mandate a mask, and that's totally cool.
I've seen that here.
Mhm.
I've seen that as I'm in Houston, that people, you can come in or with or without a mask,
Yeah.
but workers are wearing masks. Probably a smart decision. It makes everyone that comes in comfortable. People who don't wear a mask don't care. People who do,
Well,
feel a
it's
little more comfortable. That's great. Today you are donned in the red, white, and blue. That is very, very cool. And how apropos, because the president of the United States has said we are looking at normalcy by the 4th of July.
That's crazy. That's
Yeah.
so crazy. I decided to rock the red, white, and blue just because I figured, I'm like, what is Michelle going to do with all that freedom when she's here in Texas? And and it's interesting to think back into history. And Texas was actually, it got the name Texas from techos, which is a Native American word for friend or ally. And I think Texas is all about being friendly to our ability to make personal choices. And that's why, really, as of 2021, I'm going to sound like I was hired by the Economic Development Corporation, but Texas has the ninth largest economy by GDP in the entire world. It's incredible, but it's for a reason. It's because it's a really friendly place to come and do business, and it's a great place to come and build a family. And go figure, an intact family and the ability to work hard and pursue goals, it equates to something, and that's growth in a lot of cases. So to see other states just kind of live differently and really kind of agree with and or conform to what is coming out of the Biden administration. It's unfortunate. I think that a healthy government, especially one with a lot of different ideas and different ideas about how to do certain things, there's always going to be a level of conflict, but there's also always going to be a process about how to resolve conflict. And so I think healthy conflict leads towards a greater outcome. It is a better outcome for everybody because it includes compromise.
Well,
And
but that would insinuate that we are allowing conflict, we're allowing differing ideas, and we just are not. I was
right.
watching CNN just seconds before our interview, and as they were talking about the government opening up, I was noting an awful lot of a one-sided reporting, and it infuriates people that are paying attention, that are looking beyond what we're being spoon-fed, because we feel like we're being told what to think. And, oh, that's irritating. Here's what I heard. We're hearing truth, and the president was saying that they're an administration that's going to tell the truth as opposed to lies. Well, thank you that I needed to figure that one out. But and I heard the word truth over a half dozen times in just a few moments. They're telling us the truth now. Now we're hearing the truth. Well, whose truth are we hearing? The CDC's, which is a select group of scientists that think a certain way without allowing, like science does, differing points of view. We heard someone on CNN in just those few seconds come on and say, and as opposed to the past administration, and I'm not saying this to champion Trump, I'm saying this to champion ideas and to not be indoctrinated. They said, well, the 4th of July, you heard the president talk about hot dogs and being outside at barbecues with his family. And you could almost hear the dun, 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 in the background. And President Trump talked about going to Mount Rushmore. Now that just says everything you need to know about those men. And like, what does that say? It says you do whatever the heck you want on the 4th of July.
Oh my
That's what I want
goodness.
to know. So there's two things to that I want to present to you in my long dissertation. Thank you for
I
listening.
love it. I love it.
That on one hand, are we really going to be free by the 4th of July if all we're really being is led in one direction by the media, by the administration, by people who are living in fear? And number two, are we ever going to be truly free? I mean, not just from the virus, but really free if we can't have that conflict that you're talking about.
Oh my goodness, such big questions. I mean, are we ever going to? Well, are we going to be free by July? Shoot, without this diversity of information and dialogue and news sources, CNN is pushing to deplatform any voices that are dissenting from the opinions that their
There
commentators
was nothing
share.
on the other side saying, well, here's something that you might consider.
Mhm. And it's not just them, right?
Yeah.
It's those who they are friendly with, CNN, MSNBC. We know the list. It's incredibly concerning to think that if we have an idea that's a little bit different, we're going to be shot down before we even start flying.
What if
To
that idea is the solution? What if that idea has merit? Oh,
often it is, especially when it comes to innovative ideas and the introduction of new products and services and thought are what make really our society fantastic. That's why we've grown the way we've grown. That's why we are the United States of America, and everybody wants to be here for a reason. It's because of that. And so if all of a sudden we're going to say, no more, guys, we're done thinking differently, we're done having an actual dialogue, which a dialogue, I would say, is a conversation between two people with different ideas that actually works towards an outcome, right? I think this, you think that. We're having a dialogue, a discussion that's going to lead to something productive. And so when you have a really, really strong group of individuals who control that dialogue, who control literally the conversation, but also an already really kind of predetermined outcome of that conversation, we have a huge problem. With CNN, we've seen repeated attacks and also coordinated attacks from really the House of Representatives, really kind of going after. I don't want to say conservative media, but that's kind of what it's trended to be lately. Attacks on Newsmax, attacks on Fox News, attacks on any up and comer that might have something to say. This is a problem because it gets rid of a balance of conversation. It makes for an echo chamber of just one side of the story. If this were happening and they were saying get rid of CNN, that would also be a problem. Let's be clear on that.
yeah.
We need both sides to have that debate.
That's what our democratic republic is really all about.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not really hearing. I mean, another thing that I heard was Poppy saying, well, aren't we going to get, kids vaccinated? They're only vaccinating to 12 years old. What about the babies? I mean, I can give a shot to a 1-year-old. What's going on? Problem is, first of all, that shows an ignorance. How is it that these people who are opining, not just reporting news, but opining on it, how is it that she doesn't know that up until 6 years old, you don't have that protein for the inhibitor to work? How do you not know that? I mean, I'm not the big buck, news anchor, and I'm just Michelle. I know that. It's so up until 6 years old, they don't even have that. And why aren't we hearing from the my body, my choice people? Where the vaccine's concerned. My body, my choice. Oh no, it's not anymore because now that affects me. No, it doesn't affect you. If you're vaccinated, you should be great, right?
Well, I kind of wonder though, are those people trying to be heard but just being silenced? Right? Like I think it was actually on MyMichelleLive, and I think it might have been last week. You shared something from the Heritage Foundation with a feminist lesbian who was talking about really the attacks on gender, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that maybe these people are trying to be heard, but they're just being silenced because you have really strong voices like these representatives out of California, Eshu, pardon my pronunciation there, it might be Ishu or Eshu, Representative Eshu and
McNerney. You're in Texas, you can get away with saying it different. The rest of us just sit back and go, okay, it's a Texas thing.
Oh, that guy. Oh, that Texas guy. But you have these representatives who are, in a lot of cases, funded by some of big media. So when you look at what they're doing to try and request the TV providers to really cancel certain networks from their channels, Okay, well, these TV providers also own some of these channels. They own, what is it? AT&T owns CNN. Comcast owns MSNBC. So, okay, there's a relationship there that might present conflicts of interest, and they're colluding and coordinating to get rid of potentially a voice that should be heard.
You have a really good point. And this is something that as you're watching, I don't want you to think like I'm thinking because, you like me. I mean, don't even be tempted to think like Adam's thinking because he's such a cool guy. Look into it, think for yourself. If we look through history, Adam, we see many times that brilliant, smart, um, people have been duped into group think. It's a byproduct of how we're made. But it can be good used for good, and it can be used for our own demise. And we're seeing that. I think the media has become nothing more than a bunch of brown shirts. Look it up in your history
Right.
books. And we're at a really dangerous time. You did send some kind of cool information on Texas that I wanted to share. I thought that was pretty cool. Let's take it on.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting. So I kind of earlier was talking about where the word Texas came from. Like, kind of a weird word, right? Let's talk about that. Yeah, it came from Techos, which is a Native American word meaning friend or ally. I think that's really cool. It was actually the tribes that were in East Texas that came up with that before the Europeans came over. Guys, here's a fun fact. Everybody's like, wow, everything really is bigger in Texas. So there's a ranch in Texas that is actually bigger than the state of Rhode Island, and it's called the King Ranch. And for any of you Ford lovers out there, if you have a Ford truck, you may have noticed something called the King Ranch Edition, and it's got like the cool saddle leather in it. It's like the Gasoline Supreme high end F-150 that came out. I think it was, what was that, early 2000s or so. It was a pretty cool vehicle. So yeah, Texas is big. There's also actually a windmill farm that's larger than Manhattan, which might seem a little bit weird. Manhattan's pretty big, right? The Big Apple. Yeah, come to Texas, check out some mills. They've got a few of them at that farm. But Texas is kind of an interesting place too. The people here are unique, very diverse backgrounds, and
Yes.
yeah, and it's a cool mixture of obviously European settlers and just Native Americans that established communities and families here early on. And the phrase "the Six Flags of Texas," right? There's a theme park called Six Flags, and that came from Texas specifically because of, well, it was basically the business owner trying to kind of give a shout out to Texas history. Which, by the way, all kids going through the education system here in Texas are given a nice strong dose of Texas history. And so we actually have Texas history courses that we take before high school. And Spain was the first actual country. Texas used to be Spain. That was the first flag that flew here after the Native Americans controlled the territory. But of course, things changed. The French came in, and then shortly thereafter, the Spanish were like, no, actually, we do kind of want Texas back. So the Spanish took Texas back from the French before the Mexican independence took place back in, what was it, like the early 1800s or so. And so Texas was Mexico for a while before the Texas Revolution, which you might hear stories of the Alamo and
Yeah.
good old Davy Crockett, and
Come
you may
on.
all go
Yeah.
to Hill and I will go to Texas. So you'll hear really cool stories. And actually, if you look back at probably Turner Classic Movies, probably some cool movies too about the Texas Revolution. So so we have Spain, we have France, we have Mexico, the Republic of Texas, Texas being its own country for a while. Texas then became the 28th state in the United States of America, but just for a few years because history had to happen, right? Texas actually ended up joining the Confederate States of America for a hot second, about 4 years or so, before rejoining the United States. So the Six Flags of Texas are real, and it's because we've basically been our own country, but also been a part of five others throughout history.
And in being your own country, you're coming under a lot of the media's ire and a lot of people's concern. Even here in Texas, there are some people who are concerned about how Texas is out of step with much of what the rest of the country is doing. Oklahoma is kind of following suit. Maryland, if I'm correct, Adam, has lifted restrictions with a lot of caveats. Still everyone has to have a mask mandates and such. So Texas, yeah, you're kind of doing your own thing.
In a lot of ways, Texas has. I mean, if you look at, the power grid of the country, right? There's a power grid for the East, there's a power grid for the West. And then Texas has its own power grid, which actually came under a lot of scrutiny after we had the big winter freeze here.
Yeah, yeah.
Texas is actually, so in respect of kind of that power situation, there was this issue between renewable energy and baseload power needs. And so Texas is actually one of the leaders when it comes to renewable energy generation in the country. A lot of wind farms, a lot of solar. Obviously, we have a pretty good coastline, but hydroelectricity isn't like the end all be all here. But that being said, our grid, I think, really is working to sort of modernize what it needs for baseload power. And so when you hear some of the news come out about Texas being kind of maybe a little bit antiquated from an infrastructure perspective, it's just not true. For the most part, we do have work to do when it comes to maybe adding some other clean sources of power to firm up the grid. I know nuclear is a really good option for baseload power. When the wind's not blowing, when the sun's not shining, you got to have something. So, but you mentioned, I mean, Texas does kind of beat to the I guess the tune of its own drum, right? Michelle, there's a town here called Dish, and the town of Dish actually used to be called the town of Clark. It's a small place with 201 residents. The reason why they changed their name is because these 201 residents wanted free TV for 10 years. So they made this weird deal with the Dish Network company, and Dish Network gave them little DVR devices and said, all right, guys, if you change your name to the town of Dish, you're going to get free TV service from us for a decade. Can you believe that?
That's funny. And what's in the name? You also have a town here called Cut and Shoot.
That's right. Yeah, and also some throwbacks to Europe, right? We got Paris, Texas. There's Dublin. We have Italy. I mean, there's all sorts of like funny little things here.
That kind of shows that there is a real diversity that I think a lot of the rest of the country doesn't understand. That in that diversity, you make it work. People are people everywhere. They really are. It's kind of the same thing. True story. If you saw my TikTok, I was stuck on I-69 for over an hour in one place. I've been behind accidents before, but never an accident where I'm just sitting there, where no one's directing traffic to get around. You just sitting there in traffic and everyone's just on their phones hanging out. And I don't know if things are just a little slower, people are just chill here, but I'm not.
you know, well, like you said, people are people. It doesn't matter what town you're in or where you're sitting in traffic. You're going to find someone who's picking their nose and probably another one who's singing really loudly. It's just people.
One guy, Adam, who was like, yeah, I'm not doing this. And so he turned out of traffic, went up the side of the road, and then got off at the exit and left. And I'm going, I'm stuck. I'm wedged in. But the guy in front of me makes a deal with the truck, and I could see this kind of exchange happening. So you can imagine, I'm thinking, all right, I'm doing this. So they pull out, I go, and there are all these people with their windows down because it's kind of warm evening, and they're like, wait, what do you do? I've been waiting here for an hour. They're probably still waiting there now. That line was backed up to Mexico. I'm not kidding. This thing was
full Texan.
Yeah. And people were going, what are you doing? And I say that to say that I love the way Texans have these differing ideas. I was here before the election. It was much different than my hometown of Seattle, where people, if you were a Trump supporter or like me, I was a libertarian, there was ire and anger and canceling and intolerance a lot of times. I'm not saying it runs the gamut, but
sure.
Right?
Well, it's very interesting. Well, it's interesting, because like you said, there is that diversity here. And so, my brother lives in a part of Dallas where if you had a Trump sign or a support the police sign in your front yard, people would throw rocks at your house, which is insane to think about. But then, maybe just a few miles down the road, you have the same stuff in your front yard, and it's totally chill. It's like,
That's what I found here in Texas. People were chill about it's fine, people think differently. That's okay. Let's go to church, or that's okay.
right.
Might have something to do with it. I don't know. But it was really different. But I noticed that there were still, like that accident, there are people who are, we're all in danger of just being stuck in traffic going one direction. This is what we're supposed to do instead of maybe lightening the load, finding a safe alternative, and making things easier. We are afraid to think out of the box. We're afraid to do what we're not supposed to do. That's why I think looking back at the week as we do, Adam, is such an important thing. And looking at it through the lens of freedom. We've been talking a lot about COVID. So while we're still here, let's talk about the $1.9 trillion relief bill. Everybody gets a little piece of the pie,
Oh
right?
my gosh.
Pay us off and we'll believe whatever you want.
You said it best. Everybody gets a little piece of the pie. I mean, so it's interesting, the Affordable Care Act was titled the Affordable Care Act, but it made healthcare very unaffordable for a lot of people. This relief bill is titled really it has the word relief in it, right? But I think it was the American Rescue Plan. I mean, these bills are given these misleading titles to let people think that it's all about this when it's really about that. There's so much. Okay, 9% of the relief bill, 9% of that $1.9 trillion is actually relevant to COVID, which is insane. So, like, at the end of the day, we have to pay for this, right? Like, it's coming out of our pockets. It's hurting the wealth of our country. We are just digging a really, really, really deep hole that we're going to have to come out of someday, hopefully, God willing. But, the relief bill that was passed with really like zero Republican support. We're a country with ideas. We have to compromise and come together to make deals that work for everybody. This particular deal is it's like a wish list. It's like a slush fund that's been created. And I'm concerned about the long-term implications here. We have in this bill, I mean, there was like $350 billion allocated for states and local governments. A lot of them that aren't even in need of this money. Only 12 states actually showed a need for financial support here. So where's the other money going? What is it being used for? There was money in here for Planned Parenthood, for civic volunteer agencies that actually had ties to that bailout fund for the rioters. So, in my mind, I'm like, what are we doing here? When you have a bill that's a stack of paper that really nobody's read, and it's passed, and it's just kind of given the signature because it has a fancy title and it makes for a nice press conference, we've got a big problem. And this is it's not uncommon. We're seeing a lot of bills being passed this way. My concerns about this particular bill are what they're going to do for the welfare state of this country. Is the money in this bill going to be the start of something that stifles the ability of really some of those minority communities to actually find opportunities in the private sector that allow them to create generational wealth, that allow them to thrive and survive and pursue happiness? A lot of what our country has done from an allocation perspective when it comes to allocating government money towards certain social programs, in fact, has created the opposite result, being creating a result that doesn't provide opportunity, but in fact it holds people down. So we have to give people the tools and help people make the right choices to live their lives in a really happy, healthy, and productive way. The contents of this particular bill just don't do that.
No,
But they're also not even for COVID. Like, if we're going to do right, if we're
pop out kids, you make money. Pop out kids, you make money.
yeah. If we're gonna allocate funds for schools, that's fine. Let's do that, but let's do that separately, right? So we can actually have a conversation about it.
Yeah. Instead of sneaking it in, it really is. I'm sorry, but I don't think we're really seeing what, if we want to talk about racist issues,
Mm-hmm.
we have it pointed in the wrong direction. We have white saviors, for the most part, in our government and in the think tank areas that are saying, hey, we're going to give everyone child credits, and we're going to give everyone a minimum wage, and we're going to raise it across the country. Who cares if cost of living in LA, Seattle, and Portland are through the roof, and in Alabama, the average person doesn't make $15 an hour. That's fine. We're just going to give out someone else's money, and without a conversation, I can see a minimum wage is fine. But without that conversation or without freedom, we're in such a weird place where we're not even thinking, and we're going to throw out, we're going to pay you for having kids. We're not going to work on the fact that some of the biggest problems within the Black community is fathers aren't present. There's been conversation about that, but that's awful. That's racist. How dare you say that? Hey, look, it's true. Fathers aren't present. And the Black Lives Matter movement had to take down from their page, and one of the few things that we've seen a retreat on, we stand against the traditional nuclear family.
I saw that. That was shocking to me. So I think, all right, so Black Lives Matter, I think you got to kind of cut that into a couple of pieces. As an organization, huge problems. As a statement, obviously Black Lives Matter tremendously, without question. But the organization itself is a Marxist organization that does not perpetuate the ideals that are good for the Black communities of our country. They just are not. We need to do things to support our HBCUs, the communities around those. We need to do things to help create economic opportunities that allow for Black families and Black business leaders and just community leaders to really just kind of create success for themselves and for their family. We can't entitle or give, because that really does the opposite, right? When you create entitlement programs, it doesn't matter which community those entitlement programs are for. It disincentivizes hard work, and it really kind of stops you from really looking beyond the walls that you're confined to. But when you open up the door, when you shine some light on opportunity that truly exists, then great things can happen. And so it's been really, really sad to see sort of how the Black Lives Matter movement has, really kind of negatively impacted our country. In one respect, it's opened up an important conversation to have about race relations. But on the other hand, the organization itself is one that's very dangerous. So, I always think it's important to sort of slice the word Black Lives Matter into a couple pieces to kind of talk about it. One, as an organization and what that organization stands for, but then two, just race relations in general, the discussion of diversity and inclusion, what that means, equity versus equality. How can we actually make a difference versus, I think, the organization that tries to exploit political and financial resources to gain power. Yeah. So how can we actually make a difference in the community versus how do we support an organization that might be counter to everything that our country stands for?
Yeah. Within weeks after the George Floyd incident, I was at George Floyd Square, standing right in front of the memorial to him and his death. I walked around the neighborhood, and I want to tell you, in that neighborhood, it was not a Marxist political movement, Adam. No joke. The leaders there, I sat with them, I talked with them. It was a real interesting feel to that neighborhood. Number one, they wanted to have dialogue with the city. Many of the leaders weren't interested in completely overturning defunding the police. They just wanted to have more inclusion in what was going on in their neighborhood. But it went deeper than that, and it surprised the heck out of me. And this is not what you saw on the news.
I think George Floyd's family was a part of that conversation, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh my gosh, yeah, and his friends, family. Every night, though, Adam, there were baptisms on the street. Every night there were meetings and people were preaching the gospel. And I'm not here to get all Sunday school on you, but which I will do anyway. But there was something different there, and I think that's indicative of what's happening in the country today. The more crazy and over the top and canceling that we get, the more people are going, okay, this is getting weird. And we're looking for something real, not being forced into thinking what someone says is right based on what, but something deeper. And at George Floyd's Square there, they were looking for something based on the real truth. If you don't have God, then what is your truth? There's no ultimate truth. So your truth is subjective. And then because it's subjective, other people can't come to that conclusion without you forcing them to, right? And so we're seeing what's happening here. Do you think we're going to start to see people going, the lights coming on and going, okay, wait a minute?
You know what? I think we're kind of getting there, and this is I say that universally. I think a majority of our country is starting to kind of see what's going on. And so I think in a lot of ways, not only do they see what's happening in terms of the organizations that are driving a lot of the division in our country, I think people are actually kind of realizing we have a lot more in common than what we're kind of hearing here. And so looking at mainstream media and some of the garbage they're spewing, frankly, it's been kind of interesting to see a really widespread rejection of media bias to start. And the media is hugely responsible for a lot of this because they amplify messages. And Michelle, from your career in journalism that being an objective source of the news is hugely important. So when you look at the
Wait. It is. I know that because I've been there, but I'm also, you may have heard me tell this story that in when I was just starting in the late 90s, I was so excited about being part of the news, Adam, and being objective was a badge of honor. If someone couldn't tell how you leaned on a story, you have arrived. That was good journalism. But something happened. My editor came to me after writing a news story saying, this is great, well written, but if you say it like this, people will think this. And that grew. That idea is there. No, we're going to say it like this because we want people to think this. It's better for them. No, it really isn't. And we have no room. A story that you had brought up in our emails, we don't have room for anything outside of the norm or even for flubs. This was kind of an interesting one. Tucker Carlson.
Ooh, Tucker Carlson, so Tucker said some things that were, I think, really stupid. The thing is, it's
Well,
okay to say,
let's talk about that because people may not even know. Some people.
yeah. So in a nutshell, basically, earlier this week, of course, Tucker has commentary before he introduces a guest, and basically Tucker was talking about women in the military, and he was kind of making a fool of himself in the way that he was being disrespectful about women in the military who may become pregnant and certain things that, from a health perspective and just from a decency perspective, that need to be done in the military to, obviously take care of some of those needs. Now, as a result of some of his words, Tucker is obviously facing a lot of backlash. I saw just a lot of fire on Twitter. There's a lot of fire in general online specific to what Tucker was saying. Now, as a commentator, as a show host, there are going to be things that come out of every show host's mouth that are either controversial or wrong or not necessarily okay to say, right? Look at us, right? But the thing is now the military is saying, you know what, guys, we're going to cancel Fox News from the military bases. Okay, so here's the thing. The government should not be canceling any voices that are out there in our media. If Tucker is going to say something that might be stupid, because I think that without question we can all agree, I hope that we can all agree that women in the military provide a lot of value and they're just as worthy
That's
as
true,
men.
but what's wrong with having that conversation?
Absolutely.
You and I probably both have friends that are in the military, women who've served in the military. One of my best friends in the world, she was an ex-Marine, but there are those conversations of a fraternization, of some distraction. Those things are things that we should have conversations about in
Definitely,
order to
definitely.
strive for excellence. And no, the military has no place, or the government has no place saying, oh, we're going to cancel, because there's this little thing that I have heard in front of my show for decades. The views and opinions of this host do not represent the staff, management,
Right.
or maybe anyone in the known universe. It's
Right.
called
Well,
disclaimer.
if people are going to have a problem with a host or with the words that are exchanged on one of these shows, let the ratings show that, right? That's fine. Turn the channel, look elsewhere. But by all means, we can't just cancel a very loud voice that's on the TV or in the radio.
Who
Senator
happens
Tammy
to be
Duckworth.
one of the biggest proponents traditionally, commentary wise, of the military, and
Well, here's a
that's
theory.
where, oh, go ahead, go ahead.
So it's very possible also because I know Tucker Carlson is he has an above average IQ, right? He might say things that a lot of people agree with or strongly disagree with. It's very possible that he was using his platform intentionally to say something incredibly provocative to spark a conversation about women in the military, and gender in general. So there are cases where these hosts knowingly use their platform to knowingly say something that they know is inflammatory to start a conversation. Now,
And that's
whether
okay. It's commentary. It's
right,
meant to be commentary. We're just in such a crazy cancel area. And here's an example of something that is gnawing at those who like to cancel, and that's Parlor.
oh my gosh, Parler is continually under attack by everyone that disagrees with everything they stand for, which
I
is
didn't even,
free speech.
honestly, I'm not cool. So I didn't even know what Parlor was before a lot of this, we're canceling it. I was, just, I'd maybe heard it tossed around, but it was like, okay, whatever. But then when I realized that I've been canceled at times on Facebook for posting. In fact, last week, one of the news stories that we cited on vaccines
Oh
was
yeah,
taken down. It was
I'm not
canceled.
surprised. Was it the one out of Israel?
Yeah, I
Of
was like,
course it
are you
was.
kidding me? It was canceled. I mean, people can't go and research it for themselves. I'd never been canceled before. I feel like really cool. I think we talked about this. I'm getting t-shirts that people can buy on My Michelle Live.
Canceled.
Canceled. Heck yeah. I'm so excited. I've
We're
been,
gonna wear those on Fridays, y'all.
yeah, that's right.
But yeah, I
So,
mean, Parler basically was this kind of Twitter alternative. It was like a very early Twitter with the same concept for the most part in terms of microblogging and sharing different things about what you're doing today or what you're thinking about. Uh, Parler existed because there was a huge trend taking place on Twitter and on Facebook that was literally, like Michelle was kind of getting to, canceling thoughts that really their leadership teams disagreed with. So you have, and this is actually something that I want to ask Professor Alan Dershowitz. This guy is a great thought leader on constitutional law, but at what point do we start to consider certain social media platforms to be utilities? And so at what point do we sort of basically take away some of the power that these leadership teams at Twitter and Facebook have to silence and censor debate and conversations? Where is the line drawn? Because right now they enjoy Section 230, which really allows them immunity from anything that any of us might say, however terrible that might be. Uh, these companies do not have, they don't legally have to be subject to take responsibility for anything their users post to these platforms. So my question is why are they going about the activity of picking out who they want to shut down and who they want to lift up? They don't have to do this at all. They don't have
it's
to silence
called
anybody.
indoctrination, and we're all falling prey to it, and we're told what to think. And based on our ideology, I don't even think we can, we're to a point where we have to see, and we do this on right, left, wherever. Oftentimes we have to see what our favorite commentator says in order to confirm what we think. We're so afraid to think for ourselves. I see that happening. And I saw that with the Meghan Harry interview. People were like, I don't know what to think about this. You watch that and you go, why are we watching this? This is
Yeah,
like a
what is our
trend.
obsession with the Royals? In the United States, I mean, I'm trying to figure out what our obsession is with the Royals on one side, But on the other, I'm just like, yeah, why are we talking about this as a nation? I mean, the United Kingdom and England, their history is very rich, right? Now, it's interesting to kind of hear the substance of this interview that took place this week. Uh, Obviously, some pretty controversial things were said.
Okay, the Brown thing. That was
Yeah,
probably the one thing that you're going, oh, if that's the case, that's kind, but who said that? No one,
right.
it is once again not something that we can get a back and forth on. It's like, yeah, there was discussion about how Brown, you know what? I'm going to just be straight with you. You live in Texas. There's a diversity, as we talked about. You know, you can have a white guy married to a Mexican chick, and you know what? You're going to have that conversation. Are they going to come out with blue eyes? Probably not. But what if they do? Is it going to look like every family, no matter what color you are, has a conversation?
Sure.
What is this child going to look like? Is it going to have dark curly hair like me? Is it going to have, whatever? You're going to have that
Yeah.
conversation.
And you know what,
I want
Michelle?
context.
Well, exactly. Oh my gosh, context is the word you just pulled out of my mind. I was listening to what Alan Dershowitz was saying about this particular topic, and he was like, you know what? If I were to cross-examine Harry and Meghan, I would want to ask them specifically, what is the context behind that? Mixed race couple.
Oprah, hello.
Sure. I mean, well, biracial couples are, I think, just like other couples, and I think that when it comes to having a pregnancy that you're talking about, a lot of those conversations are conversations of excitement, and so you have parents just kind of wondering what their kids are going to look like and what features they're going to have. And it's not because they're just like, oh my gosh, what if they look like this? It's,
And maybe it
oh my
was,
gosh,
but if
what
you
if they
don't
look
have
like this? They'll be
context,
just
you
beautiful
don't
and
know.
perfect.
And then it's just this accusation, this who said that?
Right?
That was her response. And you're like, what?
And of course, the context is important because there could be a negative connotation to it,
Yeah,
or it could just be people being super excited about the possibility
you
of just
don't know.
having a beautiful child that looks like mom or looks like dad or looks like a little bit of both, and you're just kind of wondering, what is this beautiful kid going to look like? And you know what? One of the interesting things is the royal family has kind of ruled over a majority of the world at one point, in history. If they were to have a child that maybe is a little bit darker in shade than I think Harry, who's a bit of a ginger, right? He's pretty pale. That would be, I think, a fantastic, beautiful addition to their family, right? And so I think that
To show a lot, and what if, and I'm not leaving out the possibility that they're like, we want everyone to be lily white, but I'm also saying, but what if they're saying, hey, what if this child is a bit darker? That says something nice for us. It really shows that we're a 21st century royal family.
the context matters.
Don't know context, and people are coming unglued without having any context over a couple of spoiled royals who are living in their multi-million-dollar mansion with their servants, and we're supposed to feel sorry for them
Didn't they
because
get like a
they don't
million
know
dollar
who
deal
did.
here? Wasn't this like $1 million deal they got from Netflix, I guess, about
Yeah.
right? And it's not okay. So the United States is about merit. We're a meritocracy. We get to where we are through hard work and through our merit. The what is it? The quality of our character, right? And so, but here it's the royal family. You're born into this. You're born into these millions of dollars and this
Yeah.
vast wealth. You're born into this status and this power. Um, it's really everything that is not current in terms of what really our society and also the British sort of survive and thrive by. We survive and thrive based on hard work and collaboration and compromise in some cases. We don't survive and thrive for the most part based on where we were born and what we were look like when were born. We just don't.
No, but we're trying to put ourselves back in those boxes. We're trying to put ourselves in these boxes that limit freedom, limit our movement, limit our interaction. Tell us that some people are just inherently bad. The latest thing now is that your toddler is racist. Come on, kids do not know the difference. Kids do not care what a person's color is, especially a toddler. Get over yourselves.
It's the most ridiculous idea ever. Like it's just it's so ridiculous. And also too, I mean, when you look at a kid, like just look at a toddler, look at a kid that's under 3 or 4, and like honestly, just try to call that kid racist. That kid doesn't even know what that word means. It's just
No,
so
nor do they know what transgender and what sex do you feel like is. We've
right.
oversexed our kids, and now we're indoctrinating our kids into our own issues. There's just no limit, and I think that the as we wrap up today, Adam, the lesson maybe as we review the week is start to think for yourselves. Look at how crazy things are getting and really start to question that, research, look a little bit deeper, because the truth will set you free. You get the final word.
The truth will set you free. That's without question. I mean, excuse me, at the end of the day, we're Americans and we have a great system that has sort of gotten us to where we are. But it was Benjamin Franklin that basically said it's up to us to hold on to what we have. And so I think we have to hold on to the great system that we've been given and continually improve it, but work with one another to do so. And that's really the bottom line. If we can't come together and talk about important issues, then we're not going to get anywhere that's positive. We are going to become victims of history repeating itself. And that's the absolute worst idea when you think about, you know,
It's
like oh my goodness.
It's not progressive. It's not
No,
getting us into the future. It's just going back to the same old crap.
well, can you think about, I mean, just think about, World War II and just all that kind of stuff. That could happen again too. So if we don't become students of history and if we try to cancel everything that makes us feel uncomfortable and not learn from that, I think we just need to look at these things as teachable moments and learn how to not become victims of history repeating itself.
Well, as we review the week, we give you the Riz report, and this is where you can hear the truth, and the truth will set you free. Not here to tell you what to think, but to help you from being a victim of groupthink. We are taking you to a better place, and I am so grateful for my friend Adam Rizzierie for joining us today. We'll catch you next week. Perfect. Thank you so much.
Oh yeah, that was awesome.
Oh yeah, it always is. I mean, uh, our staff was saying, we were getting together and talking about some tweaks and some things, and they were like, thing is, it's really cool. I thought this too. I may have said this to you, is that that Riz report, they've all kind of said. When you start a new segment with a new person, usually you do it because it's good, but it takes a little while before it's like, wow, feels really natural and there's a really good flow and you hear where each person's going. It's like
Yeah,
we had it off the bat.
that's awesome. I mean, it's been a lot of fun too.
Yeah, it is. It's really cool.
But it's a great, I mean, I think it opens up great conversations that frankly are important ones to have. And that I think that people that disagree with us in an extreme way are probably not going to like us, but people that disagree with us in a slight sort of way are going to listen. And then they're going to realize, hey, it's okay to have a different idea about this and that, because we can talk about it,
Yeah,
you know?
exactly. Yeah.
But I love it. I really do. It's a lot of fun.
Yes, it's been great. And hey, thank you for all that information. Yeah,
Oh, yes. Yes.
I
There's so
am,
much.
that's where I'm deficit. The on-air stuff, I could teach a college course on that stuff, but you don't know what you don't know.
Right. You're exactly right. And so actually I'm writing this blog now about this just because I think it's really important information that a lot of people can get value
Oh,
from. But,
heck yeah.
you know, um, yeah, you don't know what you don't know. And it's interesting though, because creators really, it's like, okay, I created something great. Now, how do I maximize visibility to that? And the web is obviously a big place, but there are ways to kind of, I don't want to say game the system, but just to kind of like play the variables to your advantage, you know?
Yeah.
And that's what I do as a marketer. And so, working to make sure that the content that you create is easy to, first of all, it's easy for the web to digest what it is and
I'm
understand.
sorry, I'm going to eat breakfast as we talk.
You're fine. You're totally fine. But basically, just making the content digestible, not just for the human, but for the robots of Google and Bing and Apple to understand what the content is, so that they can really ensure that the right people are given visibility to the content that's being produced. And so there's ways to do that, and it's like uh, transcribing or having services transcribe every episode and having that text be available on the website. That creates visibility for search engines. Apple Podcasts and iTunes accounts for 70% of all podcast listens. It's an interesting statistic because iOS users are about 30% of the United States. So I think that basically tells us that iOS users are super engaged listeners. So, when it comes to trying to get visibility to a podcast, dominating iTunes first is like the priority. And then really it's going to Spotify as number two, and then Google afterwards. But there's kind of a system about that too. It's like, okay, so if I launch a podcast early on, the quicker I gain attention to it within the Apple platform, I can get those guys to feature the podcast, and then obviously that feature allows for a lot of incremental visibility
Mhm.
that you wouldn't have had otherwise. It's like being on the Oprah book club, it's just like it's like a total accelerator.
Hmm.
Like New York Times bestseller, awesome. And so when it comes to obviously getting listeners and sponsors, that's kind of the name of the game there. Um, but it's a challenge, right? But there's ways to do it with email marketing to a database of people that are either existing fans or people that you've worked with in the past. Getting guests on the shows to share every episode that they've been on with their audience,
Hmm.
but also too, like, actually, you have to. It's kind of like sales. You have to ask for the sale. Asking for the subscribe or asking for the review. For iTunes, reviews and time spent listening are the most important things
Okay. Oh,
to
okay.
to their algorithm. So, obviously, the more of that, the merrier. Now, if it's like these platforms are obviously pay to play in a lot of cases too. So,
Mhm.
with paid advertising, you can literally target your show to people that listen to shows like yours, and because people are trying to binge content that is
Yeah.
obviously within their area of interest, oftentimes a like paid advertising through the platforms will get you a lot of new and engaged listeners as well. So, there's a few different ways to sort of slice or I guess peel the onion, and it's just kind of a matter of resources.
Yeah. Some of that, okay, the strength that we have is that people repost their interviews. That's interviews are my strength, and the people who come on will be like, that's the best interview I ever did. I love that interview. Because I don't
That's huge.
ask the same questions that everyone else asks. It's more of a conversation. I like to pull out the story. So
Right,
that's
right.
my strength. But I can't rely just on that. Um, I have to run and catch my plane, but
Yeah, yeah, we can
I'd
carry
like
it
to
on the.
talk with you about hiring your company if you guys are willing, because
Of
I think
course.
that you need to bend to the experts sometimes, and that's where I really want to grow. And we have a great product, and to
Well, you
me,
know what? You're an
once I have the
entrepreneur.
product established, which there's some things that we're tweaking based
Mhm.
on how we're feeling, but
Sure.
the product, boom, we've got a product. Now it's about getting it out there.
You know what the entrepreneur journey is about? Basically doing enough to get by while you have to, and then firing yourself from certain things that you
Yes.
either shouldn't or don't want to do.
Yeah.
And that's what I was so happy the day I fired myself from accounting because I suck at
Hell yeah.
that. But no, I get it, and I know you have to go. We'll carry on this conversation next week or whenever you
Okay.
can. But
Yeah.
there's so much to learn and so much to kind of like focus on. So it's kind of about just identifying a first tangible, measurable goal on paper. I want X amount of new listeners, or I want X amount of new sponsors, or whatever that goal is,
Yeah.
and then just reverse engineering that goal.
Yeah. And I'd like to do that because I have sponsors that want to give me money.
Mhm.
I don't want to take their money until I have the listeners to be
Right.
able to justify that. It's just not, even though these are people who have sponsored me in the past on radio.
Mhm.
So my feeling is though, this is why you sponsor me, because I'm ethical.
For
So
sure.
I have some affiliates, which is great, but I want to see them grow as well.
Yep.
So yeah, let's talk about that, and maybe even
Perfect.
send me kind of a price list, what we're looking at, what if you can, if you or
Absolutely.
whoever you would have send that, because I'd like to
Absolutely.
have an idea and kind of work that in. I also wanted to talk to you. I'm thinking about hiring a publicist.
Nice.
I think it would be a good thing. And I work with a lot of good ones, obviously.
For sure.
But I think that would be really good to get me my name out there to comment on things, because I can do that. So
That's actually one of the growth strategies, is making sure that you are a guest on other people's shows.
yeah,
So that's a huge part of it. Oh, introducing host of My Michelle Live, Michelle Mendoza, just like it works
yeah.
100%.
So yeah.
Um, but so are you thinking about, have you already talked to those in your network, or are you sort of exploring other options? I mean, my guy Tim does a pretty good job.
Yeah, yeah. And so that's, and obviously I work with Tim.
Mhm.
So, so I'm kind of looking at the people that I've worked with, but I know because I know from a talk show host who replies quickly, who, gives you all the information, who, that's what I'm looking for. So I have like a top 4 or 5 that I go to, and I love them, and I know they work their butts off. So, because
That's awesome.
so
No, I mean, Tim is definitely a hard worker. If you want to talk to him about it, I can just have him holler at you directly.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
that'd be great. That'd be
Okay, cool.
yeah.
Awesome.
What did you pay about for a publicist? Because I've never, of all the times that I've been doing this, I've never asked that question.
Yeah, so it ranges literally from like 1200 to 1200 to 10 grand a month, right? If you're trying, more average would be between 1200 to 5000 or so per month,
Yeah.
but people that are trying to like launch a book or launch a product nationally, that's like 10 G's, right? But
Easy.
that's like book circuit and yada yada. We're not doing that. I think you could get something really reasonable for anywhere between like that
Yeah.
thousand to a couple thousand a month sort of range. Um, for sure. Yeah. I mean, when you work with like a more of a PR firm with more than just like a person who's really great at being, doing PR, right? Like, that's where you're going to be like in that premium pricing range where it's like 5 grand or so. I think working with an individual, it's just someone who you know and trust, who's, has 20 or 30 years in a newsroom and has a great network they've built over time, but isn't having to pay overhead costs for office space and for an assistant and for, web teams and yada yada.
Heck yeah.
That's kind of, that's the way to do it. So I would definitely recommend that approach. And frankly, Tim used to work for, do you know a name, Jeff Crilly, or Real
Of
News
course,
PR?
I love Jeff.
Crilly's amazing, right? He's a fun dude.
He
And
is, to me, they're the gold standard of information. The way that they send out their daily, it's like that's what a talk show host wants. That's the information that they sent. Boom, that's what I
yeah,
want.
and I've
Oh,
hired Crilly several times in the past for clients also, and but Crilly has really built a great business over time. And
I got to get the door real quick.
oh, no worries, no worries.
All right, my ride's here, my friend.
Okay,
Have to pick up later.
perfect.
High five, great show. I love
Travel
it.
safe.
Say hello to your wife
I
and
will.
hugs, and we'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good. Shoot me a message and we'll connect sometime next week and just kind of hash things out.
I would love that. All right, take care. Bye bye.
Travel safe. Bye.